Okay, so we've just wrapped up a virtual keynote for a client in the US and their teams from across the world. I think they have presence in the United States, in Canada, in Ireland, in Bangalore and Chennai. So quite a diverse group. And it's been a while since we did a virtual keynote because it's more in-person keynotes now, which is a lot of fun. Virtual is also a lot of fun. And I think this is God's way, the universe's way of ensuring that I also remain agile, because guess what? For the person who's teaching change, I should be switching gears. So today, not the stage, but all the virtual equipment where, so many updates we had to install. We are using multiple softwares here, which did not have an update in 6 months. So we had to update all of these, get used to all of those things once again. Take a look at the setup, say hi, and this high quality sound and the everything. We use most of this equipment for podcasting now, but every once in a while we do virtual keynotes also. Virtual is a great solution, guys, especially if you have work from home or remote teams scattered across the world, but you need something. You don't just need a good speaker, you also need somebody who's proficient with the tech so that you can engage people in that conversation, so that it can be visually appealing in terms of, adding graphics and overlays and photographs and videos and music and, polls and audience participation and things like that, which really are a few factors to keep into consideration if you're selecting a virtual keynote speaker for your next global conference. This was a lot of fun. And I'm so happy that it, what you develop is a muscle memory, So just like if you learn how to ride a bike and 10 years later you pick up the bike, but you never forget how to ride a bike, right? In the same way, during the 2 years of COVID, we learned how to operate all of this step by step, bit by bit. And then we sort of lost touch a little bit, but once you get into it, the muscle memory kicks in again. So keep pushing yourself, keep saying yes to new challenges, and that's how you keep developing yourself. So rightfully so, I can claim the title of both keynote speaker and virtual keynote speaker at the same time. Unique challenges while delivering virtual keynotes. Have I encountered any? Many. And especially they become even more contrasting, guys, when the virtual happens after a live. You see, live has an energy of its own. You're there in person. There's, you can recover from, you just have to show up. And here I don't just have to show up. I don't just have to design a customized keynote. I don't just have to do my research, but I also have to make sure that all of this tech, all of these multiple programs, whether it's the eCam that we're using, whether it's all of this tech here, all these gadgets are working in harmony together wonderfully and things like that. And so there is more than one thing on my mind. There's not just the content, there's not just the people, but there's also the tech part. That's one. That's one of the major challenges. The second one is in interaction. How do you hear back from people? When you're doing a virtual keynote for a large audience, they don't usually have their cameras on. Okay, if I'm doing a small focus group with 30, 40 people on Zoom, that's a different story. But for an audience of 1,000, and we did work with Siemens and Fidelity and Toast from the US and Meta and so many other large corporations where it's been broadcasting to thousands of employees, Amdocs and others. And what happens is, how do you hear back from them? How do you know that they are understanding, they are with you? One of the ways is the chat box, which we leave it open and I can see the comments scrolling, but then there's the delay. And then there is what happens when people are given an option of either joining in the live or watching the recording. Many employees, many team members prefer to watch the recorded version later on. So it can be very, very challenging as a virtual keynote speaker at that point of time if you're just staring into space and doing what you have to do. But I think with enough inner conviction, with enough experience, with enough faith that your message is going across and you're saying it in the best possible way, you are able to get it across, but that can be very, very challenging at times. But it's practice. It's the more you do these virtual events, the better you get. And I am so grateful that we've had the opportunity of doing more than 150 virtual keynotes. By and large, majority of them happened during the COVID time. And these are large corporations. These are very important high stakes meets, and whether it was sales or embracing change or innovation or leadership. And it's thanks to all that practice that you develop this muscle memory and you develop this skill of how to not only be present in the moment and deliver your message, but also how to navigate all the technology. So it's challenging, but it's fun. It helps you grow. It helps you stretch your mind. And the more you stretch your mind, the more agile and more flexible it gets. Keep stretching, guys. We've had the opportunity of working with some of the biggest corporations across the world virtually. By and large, I think about 75% during the COVID pandemic and 25% even afterwards. Names such as Siemens and Meta and Qualcomm, Citibank, HDFC, several large Indian and international clients we've worked with during this time. And one of them stands out for me is ConnectWise, an IT company based in Mumbai, I believe. We did in the HR, director HR, vice president HR was a risk taker herself. And so we did, I think, a keynote for them. And then she decided to do the entire, they hired about 2,000 people during that time. And she decided to do the entire culture training for them. So for all of those, they were divided into small batches for people based in the US, in India, and the Philippines virtually. So we did small batches over Zoom, 60 people, 100 people. We do a closed, where I had designed a customized workshop based on their values, and I would deliver an interactive session. And since it was a small group of 40, 50 people on Zoom, we could have a real-time back and forth. I would encourage all of them to keep their cameras on and their mics on, as well as the comment section, as well as Mentimeter, as well as polls and videos, and so much going on. That it was such an invigorating experience that many of them reported back saying they're crystal clear on the values. They had fun during the 2 hours workshops. It was 2 hours day one, 2 hours day two, entirely over Zoom. They learned a lot. They did so in the comfort of their homes. And more than that, they felt that they were part of the organization. That's one of the case studies that stands out for me. The second one, of course, was the Siemens Learning Jam 2023. I think it was in July last year. Very well received. It was all about collaboration. And I had a short 30-minute presentation, short 30-minute keynote, but it was available to more than 70,000. That'll probably be one of my biggest till date. More than 70,000 of their employees across the globe, and it went really well. I was very happy with how we were able to put together that keynote. So much information, personal stories, credible takeaways and action plans, and so much more. And we heard from, the next day afterwards on LinkedIn, we heard back from the attendees from across the world that they too were able to leave with a sense of renewed commitment towards collaboration and credible, practical, simple, easy to remember takeaways. And so those two case studies really stand out for me. Virtual can be very powerful, guys, because it's not every day that you can fly people from across the world and have them in a single conference center and have keynote speakers come one after the other. Maybe you might be able to do that once or twice a year. But let's say if you're a university and you want to invite guest speakers from across the world without having to pay for their business airfare or their visas and their speaking fees, virtual is a great option. It's not the best. I can't say it's a replacement for the in-person experience, but it's a great add-on. So, let's say you're based in Brazil or Argentina or Hong Kong or Adelaide or Perth or Tokyo or wherever, and you want to hire somebody like me to speak on innovation or leadership or change or growth mindset. Virtual could be a great option to have a keynote at one of the events. And then if you like the person, if you like their content, if you like their style, if they connect well with your audience, next year, by all means, fly them in business class to your conference and have them have fun with your audience. So a great way to kick off a relationship with a thought leader or an external keynote speaker. So how do we handle technical glitches during virtuals? And I'm a huge believer, and this is thanks to my hospitality industry background. I'm a huge believer in doing test runs and making sure that the entire housekeeping is done the day before. And still issues happen. We'll come to that later. But first, I believe, I don't know who said this, but it's a powerful quote. Preparation is half the victory. But it's still the half, but it's still 50% is quite a lot. So we prepare in advance. The studio is set up a day before. We do multiple internal tests. If we're using Zoom, for example, we'll set up an internal Zoom call to make sure the sound, the videos, the audio, everything is going flawlessly. So a whole lot of internal prep, including a detailed questionnaire, right? Now, we're not giving out what is exactly on the questionnaire, but we have a detailed questionnaire. And this is thanks to working with hotel companies like Hyatt International and Marriott, where I spent a few years during my hospitality background, SOPs and things like that, we created a questionnaire, which my team and I used to make sure that we are not overlooking anything, including making sure there's, the power backup is working fine and things like that. So once the questionnaire is done, once we are live, issues still happen. And that is when your backups kick in. Your option B is there. So this is the main cam. This is the DSLR we're using. We're using a DSLR for high resolution streaming of these events. And you can maybe show them how this entire thing works. But in case the DSLR has any error, we have a backup cam, which is the good old-fashioned USB-powered Logitech, which we're using. I know there are new versions, there are new 4K versions available of this. We have not invested in them. But in case something happens to the main cam, we switch to the side cam, which is not the best, but it still gets the job done. And we're using sound processing here, coming through this Shure mic and going through the Rodecaster, etc. In case there's any challenges that happen here, we go the old-fashioned way using the AirPods Pro, which has a decent mic, etc. This thing is being powered by a dedicated Mac M1, I believe it was, just when the new chips were launched. So this one is exclusive for streaming only. We are not using it for any other purpose. And that ensures that this system is decluttered, it's optimized for streaming, and it is a streaming-only machine, so it is dedicated here. This we have a variation here. This the desk we can move. It can go down or up depending upon how we want to position it on the day. But long story short, if technical glitches do happen, you need to have a plan B. You need to figure out what are you going to do in that situation. Network issues. By the way, guys, we are not using Wi-Fi. We are using old-fashioned wired Ethernet LANs. So this is our primary connection that we're using, which is plugged in directly, not via Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is not very reliable at times for high-speed streaming. But also, so here are two different ISPs, two different service providers. In case anything happens to the main network. Now, in the last 3 years, there was only 1 or 2 occasions we had to use this, but it was a lifesaver. Main network went down, what do? Immediately plug out the Ethernet cable of the main network and plug this in. And so that we are back up and running in less than maybe 30 seconds. Rarely happens, but still a backup. And then the third, another important final thing is to ensure you don't have technical glitches, or what to do is to have some help around, is to have trained people around you so that you can still be with the audience while those issues are being worked on. So that's how we prepare ourselves for issues that might arise during virtual keynotes. Thanks for watching.